All right, hey y'all, welcome back. We are back with our next concept. And this is, to me, it's such exciting stuff to be sharing this with y'all and to know that you're out there trying to mess with it and implement it. If I'd had this stuff years ago, man, I'd have been so much happier, so much quicker. I guess that's life though, you know, you're always like, if I'd have known this when I was younger, but you don't learn it till you're older. But anyway, so today we're gonna talk about worst case scenario to best case scenario. It's a great concept. It is number 4 in our total concepts. Remember, the concepts that we learned so far that kind of mess with our minds is going to be constant mind activity, critical mind, triggers, and now we're learning worst case scenario. Then we have one other concept we're going to learn next time, and that is something that kind of ties them all together. So anyway, think about, why are we doing this? Because we want to be happy. And the reality is that most of us are not happy most of the time. And when I say that, I had a really great conversation with a really good friend the other day, and he was like, well, you know, we are happy most of the time, aren't we? And I'm not talking about, when I say we're not happy most of the time, I'm not saying that we're absolutely miserable and depressed most of the time. What I'm saying is that if we're really honest and we really see what's happening, most of our time is spent with repetitive, negative, self-defeating, comparing, conversations, like all these crazy things that happen inside the mind that we cover in these different concepts. That is the reality. The more that I see what's happening, the more that I realize that that's happening. And yes, today I am so much happier than I've ever been in my entire life. I love what I do. I'm sure there's many of you that could say the same thing, that like in general, you feel like you're pretty happy, all right? And especially to someone looking at you from the outside in, like you look super happy. But the reality is that when you see and understand what's going on up here, we're not happy a lot of the time. Maybe that's a better way to say it. We're not happy a lot of the time because of all this stuff that's happening up here, where we could be happy most of the time. Starting to come up with some really good phrases and sayings there. So we want to be happy. Why are we not happy? Because of this constant mind activity. This constant mind activity has habituated us to thinking since we were little kids. And this habituation of thinking means that we're always thinking. We're thinking when we should be focused on something else. We're thinking when we should be enjoying beauty or the presence of someone else. And the constant habituation of thinking it makes us very uncomfortable in space. It makes us very uncomfortable not doing anything. We feel like we always have to fill up space and time with other things. All right? Now, the way that we resolve this and we make ourselves more happy is we become more present, and we cultivate this skill through a process we call priming and practice, all right? Which is sitting down in the morning and blocking out this time. You do a little gratitude. You meditate, which we also like to call practice, and then you envision how you want your life to be. And that meditation is crucial because in that practice session, we are practicing to catch our thinking, to catch our triggers, to catch the concepts that we talked about, right? So to catch our constant thinking, to catch our critical mind, and then what happens when we catch our critical mind, we can flip it and bring in some compassion and try to say to ourselves, can I ever see myself in that person? Do I see any hint of me in that? Have I ever been that way? Or is that person in a place where they don't know what I know right now? Was there ever a time that I didn't know what I know right now? And absolutely, the answer would be yes. So with noticing critical mind, remember, we don't pre-think about being critical, so don't be hard on yourself when you start to notice your critical mind. It's something that's primal in us. It just pops in, but we want to notice it and then flip it. All right. Then also we talked about triggers, other things, external things triggering us. So conversations and external events and emails and text messages and social media, and the list goes on and on and on. It could just be a memory, right? So, and those triggers, immediately we can assume the best in the situation or assume the best in the other person. And now today we're going to talk about worst case scenario to best case scenario. Worst case scenario means that usually when we're thinking about a situation in the future, and it could be something that's coming, walking into the next room, a workout session, or it could be something that we're planning, like maybe I have a talk or a presentation or some big event or something. Usually instantaneously and unconsciously we have this worst case scenario vision pop in our heads, and we start to imagine, like, what if, And again, I think this is very primal in this. It's very protective. It allowed us to plan for worst case scenarios, and sometimes maybe we need to do that kind of thinking deliberately and consciously, but not unconsciously, okay? You have to understand that our unconscious minds, there's a lot of different properties that we could talk about, but one of the properties of the unconscious mind is that it tries to replicate what I see. It's very symbolic. And so if I see, like if I imagine myself going in here and breaking a leg on a squat, then my unconscious mind tries to facilitate that to some degree. Versus the power of visualization, when I visualize myself the way I want to be in certain situations, I'm already starting to form new neural pathways and connections to facilitate me being in that situation. All right. Also, when I talk to myself in a certain way, I am actually programming myself to look for certain things out in my environment to support that thing that I tell myself all the time. So if I'm telling myself about this worst case scenario situation, even if it's unconscious and habitual, then I'm programming myself to look for the evidence to support that. And then when I see that evidence, I'm like, yep, see, I knew it was going to happen, right? But if I can immediately flip that around and think about what is it that I really want? What is the best case scenario? Then I program my unconscious mind to look for the clues in the environment for that. Now I start to see opportunities versus seeing challenges and difficulties and things just, potentially being a mess. I can relate this to so many different things. Sometimes I'll catch myself instantaneously going into a workout and then imagining like, what if, usually in CrossFit, we all have some little nagging injuries that pop up here and there, float around. And I've had some things recently. And of course, my first thought is like, when we're doing this running workout today is like, what if my calf pops up again? But then I can immediately notice that. And then imagine, what do I really want? I want to be sure-footed. I want to step gently and correctly. And all of a sudden, I start to program myself to be a certain way and to look for certain things. Same thing can happen with like my presentations. If I go into a presentation and I'm somewhat apprehensive, which I usually do get a little bit anxious and nervous and all that because I want to do a good job, but I can't help but sometimes think like, what if they don't take this information right? What if I start to slur my speech or what if something happens like that? And sure enough, if I don't flip that around, that's exactly how the meeting goes. I get nervous and things kind of derail in my mind. I mean, maybe some people don't see it from the outside, but if I can notice that and think, no, what do I want instead? What is the best case scenario? My best case scenario is for me to be comfortable and cool and calm and connected and laughing and answering questions and having a good time with people. And more times than not, when I talk to myself like that, then that's what happens. And that's what we want to do with this concept that we've just learned, okay? So, our goal is going forward, in addition to the other concepts that we've learned now, is now to notice our worst case scenario thinking or our worst case scenario talking. A lot of times, I'll hear people just like, just going into this spiel about what if this happens and all this stuff. Now we want to see it and notice it. We can even tell other people to look for it and point it out or something, but we want to see that, notice it, and immediately celebrate in the noticing, because that's huge and powerful in and of itself, because you've just stopped that thinking. And then the second part of that is we want to flip it and we want to ask ourselves, what is it that I want instead? Or what is the best case scenario? And then imagine that scenario or possibility, all right? You don't have to have the answer right away, but just asking the question, what do I want instead? Or what is the best case scenario? All of a sudden, the unconscious mind starts to look for these possibilities and opportunities versus being shut down into this one scenario that is the worst case scenario and looking for the evidence to support that, okay? All right, so going forward, we have our goals. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you at the next concept. Next one's really, really good too.